Awesome. All right. We would like to welcome everyone joining us today to celebrate STEM Week, especially the students and teachers, to learn more about the amazing STEM careers out there. If everyone could please let us know who you are in the chat. And if you're an educator, tell us what school or program you're joining us from, how many students you've brought along, and what grade. Everyone also please share your experience with us today on social media with the hashtags that are going to be in the chat. We would love to hear what you think. To start off, my name is Amelie, and I am your host for the Tech and Trades panel this afternoon. I was born and raised in Boston, grew up in Dorchester, and grew up in the Boston public school system. I graduated from the Boston Arts Academy High School back in 2009. I was an instrumental major there, and then went on to Wentworth Institute of Technology and got a bachelor's in industrial design. I spent a few years working at Apple and then had my first child, my son, and then started my career at Forum Labs on their customer team, moved up the ranks, and now I'm their education team lead. It's here that I've been able to sharpen my leadership skills, work on some DE&I initiatives, and started our first Latinx affinity group. I am joined by an amazing group of STEM professionals who are here to share their stories with you all. First, to start off, we have Savy Francis, who joined her union about 8 years ago and currently works for Cox Engineering. Born in Dallas, Texas, she was raised in Boston, where she attended Boston Public Schools as well. Savy worked in healthcare for many years, but found her calling to her profession in 2012 through a pre-apprenticeship program called Building Pathways that helped low-income Boston residents, women, people of color, and veterans into a union trade. Upon completion of the pre-apprenticeship in 2013, Savy decided to make Local 537 her career. In April 2018, she graduated from her program, and 2 weeks later, she bought her first house. Bought her first house. Savy has worked on many big projects like the Millennial Tower, Encore Hotel, Ink Block, to just name a few. Last year, Savy was named Tradeswoman of the Year by Boston Women in Construction. Congratulations, Savy. Awesome accomplishments. Next, we have Sherri-ann, who was born in Jamaica and emigrated to the US with her family when she was very young and grew up in New York City. The New York City area. After her undergraduate studies in computer science at Rochester Institute of Technology in upstate New York, she moved to Massachusetts area for the great opportunities in science and technology industries. She started her career as a technical support engineer and brought the knowledge she gained working with customers into the software development team to improve the quality of the products. From there, she found her passion in software quality to provide a high quality product to deliver to customers. Sherri is currently the manager of software quality engineering at Berkshire Grey, a robotics solutions company. She has over 20 years of experience in the software quality engineering industry and has worked in various industries. Next up, we have Brandon Cramer, who is a principal research engineer on the manufacturing industry futures team under Autodesk Research. In his current role, he engages with industry clients by leading and assisting research projects that explore the future applications of generative design and additive manufacturing to optimize components and assemblies. And last but not least, we are joined by Saeed Shah, who currently lives in Brockton, Massachusetts, and studied computer science and mathematics at UMass Amherst. He graduated in May 2020 and has been working at Vertex as a software engineer for the past year. Amazing accomplishments. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I will get us started, but please, for those on the call today, ask any questions that you might have in the chat or the Q&A function on Zoom, and we can get to them a little bit later. So technology and the trades aren't usually the favorite subjects of students, and it can be a lot of work. So my first question to all of you is, how did you get to where you are today? What or who got you interested, and what struggles did you face, and how did you overcome them? And then who helped you along the way? Share with us your story, and I'd love to start with Savy.
Sorry, thank you. So yeah, previously in 2012, I did the pre-apprenticeship program, Building Pathways, and I was cycle 3. Now we're at cycle 27. And at the time, the cycle I was in was an all-women cycle. So they promoted a lot of tradeswomen to come speak to our class. And there was one particular sister from 537, which is the pipe fitters union. and her name is Julie Hemingway, which I'm really good friends with now. We sit on the women's committee for our union, and she came and spoke to our class, and I was just intrigued in like all the different things that the pipe fitters do. And if um, the teachers and students do not know, pipe fitters are actually the HVAC. We have two. We have the technicians, which is the service side, and then the side I work on, which we actually put up like the copper and the big pipe, so that way you're getting the heat and the coolant into your building. So we went to different unions first, and I remember when I first signed up for Building Pathways, I wanted to be either an electrician, an iron worker, or a waterproofer through the Bricklayers Union. And then once the program was over, I was, after listening to Julie and visiting the 537 Union Hall, I was just like, wow, that's where I want to be. I want to be a member of 537. 2012, December, we graduated from Building Pathways. January, I remember I went to the Pipe Fitters Hall, filled out the application, and then it was a long process. It was about 6 months before I actually heard and got in. I remember I started on a random day. It wasn't like a Monday that I got to start on. It was a Wednesday. I got a call from the assistant business agent at the time, and he said, "Hey, would you like to go out to work?" Sure, yeah. And I'm thinking in my family, and I kind of was scared because I didn't know. I thought I didn't know anything, pipe fitter wise, but the journeymen I've worked with were great. I worked for one company for almost 8 years before I went to this new company I'm with. Since March, I've been with Cox Engineering, but before then, I was with EM Duggan. And every crew I've worked with, every foreman I worked with, were great. I was not afraid to ask questions, and they all taught me. And I just remember like 5 years, our apprenticeship, it just went by so quick. And that was another thing I was scared of, was my apprenticeship, because I wasn't used to going to school. I've never gone to college. I went after high school, I went to healthcare, and then I got into the union when I was 30 years old. And after that, I was, like I said, I was older when I got in, I should say, but do I regret it? No. I love what I do. And the best thing to do is just ask questions if you don't know anything. There's always somebody you can confide in who will help you. I've learned a lot from many different journeymen and journeywomen, I should say. Um, the hours are very early, but you get out early as well. The school, you learn a lot on the job, but you learn a lot in school as well. I'm great friends with some of my classmates till this day, and even your classmates, great they're great at helping as well if you have a question. And there's so many different ways of pipe fitting. I work with Duggan, we did a lot of residential. The company I'm with now, we're doing labs, so it's a difference, and I'm still learning even though I've been in for 8 years. Other than that, the only thing that was it. The only thing I was scared of was going into a field I didn't know per se, but I had the gist and idea because of the pre-apprenticeship program that helped me. But it's nothing I will ever regret. If I can do it again, I would.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Savvy. My brother actually is an electrician. He's with Local 103. So we were very proud of him. I know how difficult it is to be in the trades in general. So I have a lot of respect for the work you've done. And I can imagine he says the same thing. You really have to rely on your colleagues to learn on the fly and on site. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear from Brandon on kind of like, same question. How did you get to where you are today, and kind of what are some things that you overcame?
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I I ended up here kind of just by following what I was comfortable with. At a very young age, I liked a lot of things, but I didn't know one. You couldn't ask me, what's the one thing you want to do? I didn't have an answer for you. So, kind of growing up, from like high school going into college, I kind of just ended up in studying mechanical engineering, just based on I was relatively good at math and science. From different standardized tests from the classes that I took, I was interested in biology, chemistry, some math, but engineering was never a topic that you explore that thoroughly in grade school and high school. So that was still a big mystery to me, but I figured if it involves math and science, sure, I might find something in it that I start to really enjoy. But so that's kind of how I ended up going down like the engineering route. And I learned from many people, previous students, folks my parents are friends with, that engineering can kind of lead you to a lot of different good opportunities. You learn engineering, but it can take you into sales, it can take you into management, it can take you into technical routes, it can take you to other non-technical but business related routes. So it's just a good career path to focus on basically problem solving. And when you have that in your back pocket, you can kind of take it where you go. So once I graduated college, I had interned at Ford Motor Company, and they offered me a full-time position. Initially, I took it, but then I was offered an opportunity to work at a 3D printing startup in Chicago, and I decided to go with that instead because my experience at Ford, while it was interesting, I met some great people, someone who I would almost consider a mentor at the time, but right now we don't really have that much of a relationship. But I really valued the people that I worked with and not so much the work at Ford. And I said, maybe I need to find something where I actually value the work that I'm doing and the people. So I went to explore this 3D printing job for a couple of years, and it was a really small company. It ended up not surviving. So I found myself really struggling to find a job for the last, after about 2.5 years, that's the second half of that third year working at the startup. I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? I don't have like a very solid working foundation under my belt. I came out of school and started with a small company, and no one's heard of this company. So I really just had to, see what kind of stuck on the wall when applying for jobs. And eventually I found Autodesk were looking for someone to join as a contract employee on a couple projects. And I used my experience as, educationally being trained as an engineer in 3D printing and applying these on some projects with Autodesk. And eventually, the contract that I had joined on turned into a full-time employment. And I've been here for the last 3.5 years now, and it's just been great. So, my story just kind of unraveled the way it did, but I think intentionally, maybe unintentionally, but in my self-conscious or subconscious, I knew that I wanted to stick to things that felt right, felt comfortable. The people that I was working with, were good people to work with, fun people to work with. I can get along with them inside of the job and outside of it. And eventually that's where, I landed the role at Autodesk, and I've been here, and I hope to remain here for a long time. So that's just a bit about my story. Doesn't have as much drive, I think, as Savy's did. Savy, I like how you kind of knew exactly what you wanted and you went after it. But I think the moral of Savy's story and a bit about mine is I think you can learn a lot about what you're doing from the people that you're around. And if you're doing something that you like and you can learn from the people around you, it just makes for the best scenario. So that's what, I try and strive for.
No, that's awesome. And I agree with you. I think, right, there was always this mindset of like what you go to college for is what you're going to have a career in. And that's not necessarily the case, right? It takes you on through this kind of journey. So it's really refreshing, right, to hear everyone's story and how it really is different and you kind of make your own path. Also, Form Labs and Autodesk have a partnership. So kind of cool that we're both right in somewhat the 3D printing realm.
Yeah.
Awesome to be here with you. Sherri-ann, I'd love to pass it on to you to kind of hear a little bit about your story.
Sure, thank you. So basically, when I was younger, I gravitated to the math and science, similar to Brandon. I was very good with math and science, and I always thought of those areas were like a puzzle for me to solve. I was very intrigued with those areas, and so in high school, so I did not know what I wanted to do, but in high school, I met one of my teachers who introduced me to calculus. And so I loved it. I loved the abstractness. And so I started to pursue things in that area. I thought it was gonna be like maybe a mathematician. But then I picked up computers in one of the classes in high school and I loved it. So when I went for college, I was more looking for something in computers, but not necessarily computer science. It would be one thing or the other. And through the course of my time in my undergraduate studies, I realized that I like the programming aspect. I love the problem solving aspect of creating something for somebody that they could be able to use to solve a particular need. And so that was where I started my interest in. One of the biggest challenges that I faced, though, is I went to school in upstate New York. So went to high school in New York City, in the New York area. And so it was predominantly a Black African American school. And when I went to college, it was the polar opposite. And so the biggest challenge for me at that point is just to adapt into a very different environment and being able to navigate my way through studies and recognize that yes, I am a little bit different. The one thing that I also recognize is that in STEM, and which is I'm very happy about STEM, giving access to people in underrepresented communities. I was always either the only female in my class. So I had to navigate through, those were some of the challenges of being the only person. And even to this day, there are many times I'm in meetings and interacting with others where I'm the only person in the room of my genre, either a Black female in both aspects, African American and as well as a female. And so those are some of the things that I had to overcome and be able to get beyond that point and to recognize that this is what I want to do. And regardless of what I am personally, I am an engineer or I love math and I could be able to do this and not worry about all these other people. So those were some of the things that for me was a strong point and for me to be able to overcome those obstacles. And the way how was able to overcome those aspects is have a community of people that you can be able to rely on. So in college, as I mentioned, it was pretty much 90%, 95%. It was Caucasian, where I was 5% of the population were African Americans. So finding that community there was one of the big things to be able for me to was important to me. But if I did not find that, I knew that I had my family and my faith to be able to fall back to know who I am as a person and what I can be able to do to have that confidence. And I also had different mentors in my college years, certain professors. And, one of the big things that, I recognize is that you may be the first to do something and that shouldn't deter you from anything. And so your mentors or the people that you look up to may not look like you. And so there's a wealth of experience and knowledge that you can be able to get from those people. And I was able to get that in through college in certain individuals and through my friends and my family and through my faith. So I would say, one of the things is as you are trying to decide where you want to go, just to know that who you are, what you want to do, and that's the most important thing. And then you could be able to rely on your support team or support group to be able to overcome any of your challenges.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Sherry. I can only imagine, right, how that must have felt, right? Just trying to find your rhythm, find your place. And I think it's really wonderful that each and one of you kind of are setting the precedent for future generations, right? Like you are doing amazing things. So I definitely appreciate you sharing your story and your insight. And then I'd love to hear from Saeed a little bit about, how you got to where you are today and some of the struggles that you might have overcome in the process.
Yeah, sure. So I moved from Pakistan in 2014, and I think my initial challenge was to learn English. I had a lot of support from my teachers and friends that like helped me along the way, and to be here where I am right now, it was all of like the support from my teachers and friends. I had a lot of friends in my cricket team who were also software engineers, and I thought they studied computer engineering and how they ended up as software engineers, and maybe there is something I want to try, because I also like mathematics was something I was really good at, and always liked solving those problems whenever it came along the way. But I think it's not about like what you know or like what any specific subject or anything, but I think it's all about the support that you get from your peers and from your teachers and from the schools and the opportunities that are provided to you. Like from my school, even though like I was very new to this country, but still since ninth grade, they would give us the visits to different schools so that we can just go and check out how it feels to be a college student. I took one class, criminal justice class at Fisher College. I took an English course at Salem State while a high school student, so that kind of give me the confidence that even though college might seems to be difficult, but those classes that I took, it's not like it is possible and it's doable. So the two main struggles that I had was to go through was finances. How can I pay for college? And the second one was when I go to college, what will I study? So our school had like partnership. I think every PPS school has this partnership with Bottom Line, and because of them, they kind of like provided me a list of different scholarships that I applied to. Also, one of my bio teacher gave us some links to the scholarships, and one of them was Vertex Science Scholarship, which is a full ride to any of the UMass schools, and they pay for transportation, for your books, for the laptops, and covers everything. They give out like think two scholarships every day, and I was able to get one of that. So I think that the finances challenge that I had was overcome by getting that scholarship. And then the second one, the second challenge of like what will I study. So I started with computer engineering, and I did mix that up. I thought software engineering is computer engineering, and then I ended up not liking the first few courses that I took. So in my first semester, I changed my major to mathematics, and uh, but I wanted to do computer science. But at UMass Amherst, you cannot just go and change to computer science. You have to go through certain steps and apply to college and then get in. So I thought if I don't get into computer science, I have the backup of mathematics. And then in my fourth semester, I got into computer science. But by the time I took so many math courses, I was like, it's not, I can't leave it behind. So I did double major as a computer science and mathematics. But throughout those few years, Vertex always gave me the opportunity to go there in summer and have those hands-on experience with my computer science skills. Most of them I learned it at Vertex. Like every summer I went there, I worked with some new technologies that kind of helped me build a career towards what I'm working on right now. It is very difficult, especially for people like us, to find an internship in the first year. The Vertex gave me an internship in the first, right after my first semester, and I had no knowledge about anything in the computer science. But going there for those 3 months and um, working with different mentors and stuff kind of give me the confidence that yeah, maybe this is something that I can do. And now I'm working in the same department that I started 4 years ago.
That's awesome though. They had the trust in you, and you left an impression, right, in that short amount of time. So that's really awesome. And congrats on double majoring. I also started computer engineering at Wentworth. That was actually what I went to school for. And then I switched after a semester to industrial design, just because it really does take a specific type of person, right, to be able to continue with that degree, because it's hard. Those were some hard classes. So kudos to you. Okay, this is everyone. Thank you all for sharing. Everyone on Zoom, please start sharing your questions. I'm going to ask one more question to the panelists, and then we're going to go into the Q&A from you all. So please add them on there. Panelists, I'm curious to explore the issue around diversity, equity, and inclusion with you all. I know Sherri-ann, you kind of touched on it a little bit. It's no mystery that the STEM field lacks diversity, so it's difficult for our aspiring students to see themselves in the work. So what are your opinions on how we can diversify, make the industry more accessible and inclusive to folks typically underrepresented? have you, your company, or anyone you know found success, and what did that look like? I'd love to start with you, Sherri-ann, just because I know you touched on it a little bit.
Sure, thank you. Yes. So, I absolutely applaud what we're doing here today. I think that, the STEM program having access, giving access to those who are underrepresented, being able to see and talk to different people about the career path. I've always been a strong advocate of, getting more people represented in the STEM field. And as I mentioned earlier, I still go through the process of, I'm the only person that looked like me in a room throughout the day. So I would love to see more people that look like me in my field. I think, one of the great things that we can be able to do is when we have people come on site to the schools, or different companies have the high school partner with different companies, organizations, to be able to give students an idea as to what careers out there, because a lot of us, through high school, we have no idea what we want to do. We have no idea what is there, what we can even do. We know that we're good maybe in math, we may be good in English or some of the sciences, but we have no idea what the careers are associated with that. And I think if we could be able to add those kinds of information to our students as we are developing our skills, and we recognize where our strong areas are, I think that would be able to help us be able to have the students be able to see themselves in that area. And on the note of just, you may not, you find an interest in a certain area and you don't see somebody that looks like you in that area, that's okay. Go ahead and pursue it, because that's what you want. That is something that you feel like within yourself that you want to be able to do. Some of the people who are the first ones to start anything didn't have someone that looked like them. So it's one of those things where you go for what it is that what you want, and know who you are and have confidence in yourself, and do not let anybody tell you any different. There are people that may say, that's, no one's ever done that, or, you're going to do this, and question that. Don't let that shake your confidence in yourself and have you change your mind. Your decision should be based upon what you like and your interest. And always, someone that you see that you respect as a mentor, reach out to that person to see if they can be a mentor to you. They may not look like you, but they sure have a lot of knowledge and experience that they can be able to share with you. And if there are people in your community that you can rely on as well. So you may have a mentor for your career development or school or education, but then you can also have mentors for your faith and your relationships, or different aspects of your life. So it may not be just one person that fills that that need or that void in your life. You could be able to have multiple people to be able to do that as well. So I would say that, just keep your mind open to different opportunities. And I certainly think that from very early, the high schools can start providing information as to how, this particular subject, what careers are associated with that. And so that someone could say, yeah, I'm good in this area, so I would like to see if that's an area that I could be able to explore in my career.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sherri. You're a true inspiration. Can I go to Brandon to answer this question?
And could you just ask it just briefly, just so I can remember?
Yeah, of course. So it's really just around like DE&I, right? So what are your opinions on how we can diversify and make the industry just more accessible and inclusive to folks that are typically underrepresented? Have you or your company or anyone you know found success, and what did that look like?
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, it's not tough. We all know the right answer. At least the folks on the call know the right answer. But to solve it, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of energy from those underrepresented, and especially from those who are represented. They have to kind of understand that there's potential, there's smarts, the future is out there, but if their workforce isn't being diversified, they're going to lose a lot of potential areas of growth. So at least within Autodesk, we also have employee resource groups, ERGs, where underrepresented folks who want to find, another community within the company can do so. So I participate in the Autodesk Black Network, and I also serve as the community outreach lead. So I do what I can to support some of the underrepresented local communities, mainly in San Francisco, but obviously I've been working out and trying to help with my location right now in Boston as well, and expose them to what's happening within Autodesk. And Autodesk is a software company, but that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But for those who don't have any experience with STEM fields yet, how can we make the software as relatable as possible to them? So that's what I kind of try and do. We work with a few different groups and try to give little demonstrations of the software on how they can see it through their eyes, and hopefully that hooks them into the idea of STEM, and then it takes them forward in their career path. But it's definitely something that's going to continue to be a long battle. In tech itself, I don't really know what the average is, but I would assume it's less than like 3% of the employment of a certain company is Black or less. I think for Autodesk it's something like that. So you really don't see folks that look like yourselves on a day-to-day basis unless you are actively searching those out, or if you start to notice your company taking steps forward to find where they are lacking in underrepresented employees. So for example, Autodesk recently opened an Atlanta office because they know there's a lot of amazing talent in Atlanta. So if you want to try and get employees of a certain background, you have to start to curate your resources towards where those employees are located. And that's one thing that Autodesk is actively doing. And it's not to hit a quota, but it's more to just understand that if we only focus on San Francisco, then our lens is only focused on the people around San Francisco. So we need to make sure that we are really being intentional about how we interact with HBCUs, for example, historically Black colleges and universities, programs like NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. There's another program that Autodesk is heavily invested in. One of the chief officers is on the board there. So through activities and initiatives like those are ways that I've seen Autodesk get involved and try and improve the diversity within the company and within tech. But at the same time, yeah, it's definitely a long struggle, especially right now, because I think tech being such a competitive space, you're starting to see other companies try to up the game, poach employees from other locations. And every company now has to try and figure out, okay, how can we be the best at diversifying our workforce without it being fake, without it being just to show that we can provide the numbers, but actually create a culture that is inclusive of everyone. So it's definitely going to take a lot of time, but I think Autodesk is one company that's doing a pretty good job at it. Not perfect, not amazing, but again, no one's doing it amazing right now. Otherwise, we wouldn't see numbers like 1 to 3% when obviously the representation in the United States is much higher than that. So trying to reach out and get the message out and try to bring up those behind us when we've made ourselves into the room. So some of the folks on the call already kind of being a part of this conversation is one of those ways to obviously get folks aware.
That's awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much for sharing. Definitely have a long way to go, especially in the tech industry for sure. Saeed, I'd love to hear a little bit about what your opinions and thoughts are. Have you or your company or anyone found success, and kind of what did that look like?
Yeah, sure. Brandon and Sherry did brought up a lot of good points. I think we can, some of the things that I personally think we can diversify and make the industry more accessible and inclusive for folks typically underrepresented by promoting their work. So like if we promote their work, then we would create like more of a role models for them. Like if you don't see anyone like you in a role you would like to be in the future, you can't picture yourself there either. So like the underrepresentation by itself is the problem. And there are some of the other obstacles are like affording college and paying for it. So like let's say like some of the people, most of the main problem that it comes is like how can someone pay for college, and to pay for college or even having that thinking like put someone behind another students. Like let's say someone has to think about their financing and stuff, so that they have to work at the same time they want to study. So like that kind of creating the uh, like those gaps that getting bigger and bigger. So I think one of the thing we could do is to give someone a chance, like by giving them a chance that would um, like rather than going through the minimum requirements every time you apply for a job, it says you have to have the specific requirements before you can apply for it. And when you apply for it, the recruiter is going to ask you those questions. So I think if we can provide more internships opportunities for people who are represented and give them a chance for those few months, that will give them like you can see that can that person really do it. I'll give you an example of computer science specific skills. So whatever I learned at school and college, I really that like what I'm doing right now, I'm not really using some most of the skills that I learned at school, but was something that I learned in my internships. So Vertex gave me a chance, and that chance kind of like I was able to prove myself that I can do it. It took few months. They invested in me for 3 months, and now I've been working with them for over a year. And they invited me every year for another internships just because they saw me for those first few 3 months. Another example that I can give was um, we, here at Vertex this summer, there was another person who studied um, psychology in college, and she wanted to try and convert from that psychology field to the computer science. She did not have any background or anything in the computer science. She worked hard for 3 months as an intern. Vertex gave her a chance that yeah, come and work as a computer software engineer intern. And now recently, a few weeks ago, she's working as a full-time on our team. So I think the main I think thing is we should give a chance, and then based on that, it will like kind of um, help those people who are underrepresented.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those examples, Saeed. I definitely think it's incredibly important to promote yourself, right? Promote your work, and also giving back, right? So going back, even thinking about the forum that we're here today, right? As people, someone who went to Boston Public Schools, right? And being the representation for other people, it's so important that you're all here kind of, setting the standard of like, this is where you can go and this is what it looks like. So I appreciate your stories. Savvy, you are back. Maybe she's connecting. Let's see. I'll come back with this question to Savvy if she can still hear us. But in the meantime, Sherri-ann, just kind of going around, one of the questions that was asked was, what should you look for in a mentor? How have they impacted your life or your choices? And how do you start a mentor relationship?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So my first mentor, one of my professors in college. So she had her PhD, and she, the female professor. And I remember going to her and, with some questions, and, started asking her questions. I think that's one of the first things, you see somebody, there's certain elements of them that you find interesting. And, if you just start asking questions, introduce yourself and start asking questions just to see what it is that how they got there. It's similar to what you were asking me, the first question, how did you get to where you are today? And, you may not find a mentor immediately, but I think it's a mentor is someone that shares some of the beliefs that you have, someone that that could be able to uplift and encourage you, be able to be someone that has the well, where you're trying to get to. There's a certain characteristics, whether it's career or the status or whatever it is, or faith. Um, I would say that that person shares some common elements that you want, and you being able to reach out to that person, approachable, and of course, I think that person, when as you're reaching out and trying to find that person, they should be someone that's available to you as well. And you want a mentor that would be a person that could be there for you, encourage you, and to be able to provide the guidance and advice that you need. And regardless of what they may look like, there's certain things that you can be able to learn from them. So I would say, first of all, just start off with a common area, and especially if there's a place in their life where they are, and you want to be able to get to that position, certainly that would be one of the first steps. And their character is a lot. It means a lot. I think that's the first and foremost, the character of the person.
That's awesome. Thank you, Sherry. Savvy, you're back. I'm going to throw this question at you too. So the question that was asked in the chat was about mentorship. So what should you look for in a mentor? How have they impacted your life or your life choices? And how do you start a mentor relationship?
So when I first got into my local, the first person I actually worked with was a woman. Her name is Michelle. She had just passed away a year ago from cancer, but she had made a big impact. She's the one who taught me a lot within the 9 months as being my journey level person I worked with as a first year apprentice. She taught me how to read a print, read my measuring tape better. She took time helping me out with my homework assignments that I received from my instructors. And after she left to work for the T through our union, because MBTA they take tradespeople as well, we kept in contact for the whole past seven years. And when I became pregnant after I was on my apprenticeship, she always stayed in contact to make sure I was okay if I needed anything. There was days when I was working at the casino, and during my break, she would see me like waddling because I was pregnant, going to get lunch or something, and she was working at the T station right there. So I believe it was Sullivan Square. So she would actually like drive by me and call me and ask me, what am I doing off the job site? Not realizing it was lunchtime for me. And she, like I said, her line was always open. If I had like I only had an issue with my homework. That would be the only time I would call her, was for homework issues. And she would meet me somewhere during her day off before I had to go to class to help me go over it, help me study for my exam. And a big thing is it's a respect thing with the mentors. Like they're passing down knowledge that they were given or that they ended up learning, because at the end of the day, we have a skilled trade. We go to school for 5 years. It's a mechanic trade. Most of these apprenticeships are 4 to 5 years. And if they don't pass on what the knowledge they pass down to their apprentices, like I do to the apprentices I'm working with, who's going to help build these buildings? Who's gonna know, who's gonna pay the pension of the next person that gets to retire? And I just think, like, as being on the women's committee, sitting on one of the chairwomen, I think it's great that I have women who just got in who contact me asking me advice about what should they do on their first day. Like I let them know, get to work 30 minutes early. How do they want to know how should they dress or prepare for the weather wise, so on and so forth. So just respect is like the biggest thing for anybody, man or woman, because I could see I'm a mentor to a lot of my male counterpart partners as well. Yeah, that's mainly it. I just think it's a big respect thing for us, because if you know something and the other person doesn't, it drills into them. They'll pass it on to the next person to know.
I love that. I love that. Men, you can have a woman mentor and it's okay. I love that. Also, as a mother, I can't imagine. I've been there, done that. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Saeed, you're next.
Um, I think one of the main thing I would look for in a mentor is the availability. Like if I have a question or anything that comes along to me, uh, my mentor is always there for me to answer that question. He has the time uh, and he cares. Like let's say uh, if I have like if I have anything that comes along and I reach out to them, the way he respond to me, like he shows to me that yeah, the person who's mentoring me shows that yeah, they care, and I think the availability is, let's say if I need something today, that they're not coming to me tomorrow, but just just be available for me. it it is different on different level. Like let's my mentors in high schools, that were different than my mentors here at a professional level where I'm working right now. So here mostly my mentors is usually my manager, and whenever there's an issue, there's something that I cannot solve, um, I'm not afraid to just send an email or even direct text to my mentor, and I would just get like a response from him like yeah, let's do it now, or he's free after a certain time or anything. And that is like something that kind of helped me grow. And um, like the most of the skills that I have gotten uh, is through my mentors uh, in this specific job that I have. Mm, if I go to the internet, I would be spending like hours and hours. But my mentor is someone who has that knowledge uh, uh, that can provide me, like rather than wasting my time, I can just go there and get and have like answer right uh, right there. He went through it. He already spent the time online, and now he knows, and he just gave me the answer. So I think my main thing that I would look for in a mentor is person who cares and who have time for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. Definitely someone who can make the time to really help you and give you feedback. Great point. Brandon, can we hear from you?
Yeah. Yeah, this has been something that I've I've been trying to not solve for a while, but just be more aware of. It's just how I approach different mentors. Um, with an Autodesk, there's kind of like a mentorship network where you can actively go and search for folks who have a mentor availability. But the challenge with that is sometimes, people set this thing up and they don't remember it for the next 6 months, and then you reach out and you're not quite sure how important it is to them. So over the past 3 years or so, I've had, let's say, several like formal mentorships, but the one that stuck with the most is the one that I didn't go through that platform. It was someone who I kind of knew more personally. She's a woman. She's Caucasian. She's been with Autodesk for about 8 to 10 years, I think, but she's not necessarily in the same technical path as me, but she was just operating in Autodesk in a way that I thought I wanted to do as well. Like she was doing the projects she liked. She was working on both technical and, let's call it, behavioral or just business related projects she was interested in. She was volunteering. And I just wanted to like understand more about how she's operating with an Autodesk and how to get more out of that, because my first year I was doing a lot of customer work, so I didn't spend any time within the company. And then the next year I started to spend more time in the office, and I'm just like, okay, like how do I really navigate this space? And I really found out that she was the right person for me based on those similar interests. I had gone to one of those ABN Autodesk Black Network summits. It's just a collection of all the folks who participate. And it was in San Francisco, and she works out of the San Francisco office. But while it was for the Black employees, they did invite others who are interested. And she was one of the non-Black employees to come and participate in a few of the events. So right away, I just thought, okay, this is a person that I should definitely try and learn more from. And I think with mentorship, the one thing that's important is to make sure that it's somewhat formalized. Because your manager can be a mentor, but a friend could also seem like a mentor. But until you kind of understand that they know that they're mentoring you, you know that this is someone that you're looking up to for advice. And when you go into those conversations, you can be very aware about they're trying to get out the questions that will make you think harder about what you're doing or what it is you want to answer. Whereas a friend might just tell you the answer that you need, or a manager might just tell you the answer that they need. The mentor is really trying to look out for what's in your best interest, but they don't want to sugarcoat it. They don't want to just tell you the answer you need. They really want to push you into the right direction. So, yeah, I mean, I think, Say, you definitely mentioned that it's definitely someone who needs to have the time and interest in you. Those 3 other mentors who didn't work out, they just really didn't seem like they cared. We set up, the kind of cadence calls every month or 2 months, and conversations were dragged out and forced, and just it wasn't a relationship that felt like it was going both ways. So I think that's definitely something that you should be aware of, is if the relationship is somewhat effortless, formalized, they've got time for you, they want to be speaking with you, and they're giving you good advice that puts you in a position to succeed, then that's probably a mentor that you should try to keep in your back pocket, formalize, and make sure that you keep a relationship with them.
Brandon, that's great response. I would have said this exact same thing. Commitment, right? Commitment to you as a mentee, and then the transparency, I think, is super important because you want somebody to be honest with you, right, as you continue your career. We are just about time. So I have one last question for you all. But before that, everyone, please be sure to check out the other activities that are going on during STEM Week using the calendar linked in the chat, and give us a shout out on social media using the hashtags that we also shared in the chat earlier. A special thank you to United Way's BoSTEM, Boston Public Schools, and all you wonderful panelists, and everyone else who contributed for making this happen for our students. So my last question to you all, and I'll start with you, Savvy, is what advice do you have for our future STEM professionals that are watching right now?
The best advice is listen, write down everything that anybody is teaching you. I know we're in the era of cell phones, but I think pen and paper is just as good, so that way you can show them that, hey, this is what you said, right? Looking into the eyes of somebody just so they know that you're listening to them. And like I said before in the last question, is respect one another, because like I was told in one of my classes, treat others the way you'd want to be treated, especially when it comes in the trades, because you can be working with an apprentice who might become a foreman someday, where you might be out of work, and they will remember you as the journeyman who taught them and respected them when they were an apprentice. That would be my advice. And when you wake up for work, just go to work. Don't think about it.
Thank you, Savvy.
You're
Brandon,
welcome.
go back to you on this one. What advice do you have for STEM professionals, future STEM professionals that are watching right now?
Yeah, try to be as best prepared for those planned opportunities as possible, but also don't be afraid to be curious and ask questions. No one wants to ask a dumb question, but if you come prepared and you're aware of what you know, and whoever you're engaging with is aware of what you know, but you want to still ask questions and be curious, that's the best way to continue to learn. You don't always have to know everything. None of us know everything. And I think in STEM, it's obviously can be an intense, competitive space with a lot of crazy advancement that you see all over the news all the time. But always try and remain curious, and don't be afraid to ask questions and understand like how or why something's working the way it is.
Awesome, Brandon. Saeed?
I think don't be afraid to try something. Just because someone else says something is hard doesn't mean it is hard. So I think you just give it a shot, try it, and you might find something interesting.
Thank you for sharing. And Sherri, last but not least.
So I would say, as you're growing up, you may not know who you are, but to have that confidence in what you can be able to do, be grounded with that, surround yourself with people who can encourage you to be able to pursue what it is that you want. We may change our majors or our careers throughout our lifetime, but the person that who you are is essentially you. And my faith helps me define who I am. And so I hope that, you'll be able to find that within yourself, your family, friends. I think that, just being grounded in that and knowing what it is that you want and be able to pursue that. And don't let anyone talk you out of that. I was also going to say that, be curious, that curious factor. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Sometimes your heart may be beating like, should I ask this question? You know what? Ask the question and, don't be afraid of, just try to get yourself out of that situation, to be afraid and just go ahead and ask the question. It's okay. It's okay. I always say there's no stupid question, ask a question because people realize that you are engaged at that point and you're trying to connect and you're trying to get something, whether it's knowledge or a relationship or whatever it is. So that would be my advice to you.
The best advice. Thank you so much, Sherri. I love it. Thank you all again, and please join tomorrow, same time, same link for another STEM Week career panel. Thank you, Sherri, Saeed, Brandon, Savvy. You guys are awesome, awesome in stories, and thank you so much for sharing and for joining us today. Have a great week, everyone.